Hello, you beautiful, confused mind, body, spirit complexes, and welcome to another video of concepts of this beautiful philosophy we know as the law of one. If you are confused with the law of one, this is probably the video for you to rest in peace in your confusion and actually adore the element that makes us all be confused in this whole creation. So I hope that this video is going to clarify a little bit, but obviously not everything to you. And if anything, just leaves space for some contemplation of this law. Like I usually say, especially now in this video, this is just one concept that we will explore until we are back into infinity. So it's not enough just with this video, but any other experience in any density will be between or within the law of confusion. So this is just a video to talk about it again. So don't expect to know or learn too much about this, but rather the basis of why it is. And that's my intention here. I'm going to go through what is probably the most important point that we sometimes brush over and we don't emphasize, which is infinity. And so I'm going to start today with explaining what the law of confusion is, starting from the beginning, which is the primal distortion, that is the free will. Now you should remember from our past videos, especially the one on the primal distortions, which are the free will, love, and light. Those that are prior to the creation, or they are fundamental to the creation. That's why they are called primal distortions. And free will is the first one, if anything sequential in the process of becoming a creation. You can see this, just to take it out of the esoteric and bring it to a practical standpoint, that free will is, in essence, you experience it every day when you wake up. When you wake up from deep sleep, you are awakening that free will. When you are in deep sleep, you can consider yourself to be infinite. You have no recollection of anything that has happened because there is no time, there is no space in your mind. Or actually, there is no mind. That's why there is deep sleep. There is no mind activity. And so free will is operating always. And it's always, the same word always refers to time. And that time is when we are active, when we are having experiences. So free will is the first thing that wakes up. You see, when Ra describes what free will is, or what the process of the creation is, they say that infinity became aware. And this was the birth, if you will, of free will. And so we have to start with this primal distortion, free will. Now, what does free will actually do to infinity? It creates a narrowing, a focus, and that focus is love. You see, that's why in the raw material, they talk about the love as the focusing of intelligent infinity. That focus that we call logos is the creative principle. And this love uses free will to create light. And this is the birth of the creation. And so you can see the same process happening with you as you wake up, and love being just the acceptance and the perception of reality. That is just pure love. That's why we say, and you will hear in every spiritual circle, that we are love. We are creatures of love, because the mere fact that we are aware means that we are loving creatures, and every act that we do is loving from its foundation. We may disguise it, we may paint it in different colors, but it's the same love. It's the same creative principle for anything. Any thought, any action, any perception is at its foundation with love. And so going through the primal distortions, you know that free will is that first distortion, that first sequential primal distortion. And so knowing that free will is that, say, that quality that we all have, because we are part of the same source, And it's the narrowing of infinity into what we call, say, the mind. And the mind has free will. Well, infinity is completely free. So the will may be seen as a focus of the attention of infinity into a finite mind. And that finite mind is what everything is, really, from particles to sixth density beings who are returning to source. So that mind, it comes very handy when we're talking about free will, because it's within the infinite possibilities. We are only able to act within specific choices, and our attention is focused to one thing or the other. And that's why meditation is that expansion into infinity, because the mind ceases to have an activity. The activity of the mind stops. And so we dissolve into infinity. But gathering again the focus or attention, love, then it becomes again a creative principle, and that's why we act as love. And so that is the first part that will help us understand the law of confusion. Keep in mind right now that the focusing of our attention is our free will. Okay. Now, another part to bring out of the abstract or the esoteric is infinity experiencing as manyness. How can infinity experience the manyness if it's not focused into something, like I said already? The manyness is an apparent situation in which infinity finds itself, and that apparent situation is devised so it can have all sorts of experience, and it has been planning all types of experiences in the same way you would plan if you could. And some of you might be able to do a little bit of this, but you may plan in your imagination all kinds of experiences. And so it's the same drive to know yourself or to explore yourself in the different scenarios. When you were a kid, I guarantee that you were doing the same thing. You were exploring all sorts of imaginations. You were heroes, or you were a monster, or you were all kinds of things. We all did that. We all associated ourselves with different characters. And so it's the same principle, that infinity, being infinite in possibilities, is exploring itself through the manyness. And now this concentration of that we call the creation is in fact infinity believing it's you, it's me, it's the floor, it's everything. It's just the whole construct is infinity. And so in order to do that, infinity, or the one creator, is needs to put in place or maintain in place, that's why free will is paramount, needs to maintain in place this focusing of attention, this attention to one thing or the other. This is much more felt, realized, or experienced in third density, but I'm not going to get there yet. So just keep in mind those 2 points. The first one, that free will is the beginning of infinity to explore itself. It's the first quality that is present in infinity to explore itself. And it's going to do it through the illusion of manyness, of separation. That's why we always say that the more, and this has to do, of course, with density, especially third density, but the more we are associated with separateness, then the more we are invested in the illusion. It doesn't mean that it's bad, but it is just the nature of infinity exploring itself through the manyness, which can only come about by dividing itself, by creating separation. And so the call through evolution is to shed those differences and that separation to other parts of itself, because we're all parts of the same self. Now, how does that happen through evolution, and why free will or the law of confusion? I haven't talked about the law of confusion yet, which I'm preparing the scenario for you to see why the law of confusion is so important. But there are 2 ways in which we can explore this free will, through the negative and the positive usage of free will. We already know that the positive path, the service to other path, honors, accepts, and respects the free will of any single being. This is a very important point, because we as humans are inclined to, because of our own unknown identity, because we don't know who we are, we tend to want to change other people. And so we are infringing upon people's free will when we try to make them do what we want, or to want to change them. And in contrast, somebody who simply is unidentified with this reality just allows everything to happen. It's almost like if we were to walk in nature and we would try to make the trees grow different and try to move the river to another side. Of course, as humans, we do in a grand scale, but try to terraform something. At least in the sense that we need to change it because it's not proper as it is, and we destroyed hills just to construct our own buildings, and this is not the proper way to treat nature, or at least not in the way of, say, the Tao, or just the way things are. And of course, this is why we find so many issues in our society, because of the way we build things. And the same thing happens with other selves, with other people. When we try that, especially with us, we find a resistance in ourselves to accept the other self. That's because we're not respecting their free will. And so free will is, in the positive path, is an allowing and a respect and an honoring of people behaving the way they want to behave. This is, again, I'm going to use the same word of contrast, but contrast it with the way we have created our society. There's a lot of repression to free will. We have laws, we have rules, we have morality, we have all kinds of boxes in which we have to behave in a specific way. And we grow up this way. So in any case, that's just the positive path. It's easier now to explain the negative path because I've been alluding to it as a contrast for the positive, which is the manipulation and the control of other people's free will. And so you can see how using people's free will for your own gain is obviously a negative thing to do, and it's just polarizing you towards the negative. So these are the usages in a nutshell of what free will in your own and other people's, of course, how you use it will polarize you towards the positive or the negative. Now, the reason why I have been saying just free will all along and not the law of Confucian is because Ra uses the law of Confucian and the law of free will actually in the same scenario. They prefer to use the law of Confucian mostly and not the law of free will. They say that we call the law of free will the law of Confucian. And this is because, in my mind, and this is just my interpretation, well, obviously they're both the same thing because Ra says it. Not because Ra says it, but we're analyzing the law of one. And so that's why I'm saying that. As Ra says, they're both the same. We have to find common ground, see why the law of Confucian is the same law of free will. And the reason why they call it a law of Confucian is because if you think about it, for infinity to explore the manyness, that has to be through the illusion in Confucian. So free will is naturally a confused state of infinity. This confused state, you can equate it to the mind. The mind can never grasp the concept of infinity. That is its biggest blessing and its biggest demise. You can call it both things the same way. It's just the fuel that empowers this reality. The fact that the manyness is trying to become one, but it cannot do it until it stops being. That is how it becomes one. And this is the mind ceasing the activity. And so the mind is not only for third density, even though in third density, obviously the law of Confucian is much more active because we are living through a veil of forgetting, which I explained already. If you haven't watched it, go watch it because it's in the same series of this law of one concepts. And that veil of forgetting makes things even more confusing. So the mind is even more perplexed about its own nature. And this has, of course, a lot of benefits. But the point is that as we explore the creation through the mind, this also means that not only in third density, but I suspect strongly, and it's just my way of seeing things, that as long as you believe yourself to be an entity, you are not infinity. And as long as you are an entity, then you are operating through the law of Confucian, because the mind is active and is in some way associated with a sort of identity. this identity can be those of sixth density, like Ra. They say they are operating under the same circumstances because they are part of the creation. And when they cease to be the creation, then not that they cease to be the creation in that they come out of the creation, but rather that they stop being in the illusion and they become one with the many, or the infinite beingness of the self. And so the purpose of the law of Confucian is to explore this illusion. That is its purpose. You cannot explore the illusion as infinity because you need to divide yourself to incarnate that character that you're wanting to be. And so this is the reason why we have the law of Confucian. Now, just for context, because you're going to read this a lot in the law of one, the law of Confucian is something that you shouldn't interfere because every portion is in fact the creator exploring itself. So you have, in essence, no saying into what another person or entity or another aspect of yourself rather is doing, because all you can do is provide them catalyst or love, and those two are basically the same thing, but that's all you can do without infringing on their free will. This makes sense to us as humans. We want to respect other people's free will. We want to respect their law of Confucian. And so when we may see people in any sort of scenario, we just know that they're operating through that law, just like we are. We don't know any better. We're just doing what we can. And this law of Confucian is the same reason, I believe, why in the East we just we say that we don't know anything, that, wisdom is actually knowing that we are nothing, that we don't know anything. The more we unlearn, the more we are one with the environment, with nature, with the Tao, with the universe, with infinity. And when we think we know more, then we create more disillusion. We buy more into disillusion. And so, without getting too deviated from the main thing, this is the law of Confucian, is free will operating naturally as its own thing to explore the universe. And infringing upon free will is something that the negative entities do, and that's why they polarize towards the negative, because they're buying more into the illusion that they need to dominate others and use their free will. And the positive is simply the usage of honoring, accepting, and respecting everybody's free will. So this is all I got for the law of Confucian. I hope you're not more confused than before. If you like this video, give me a like, subscribe if you haven't, and that's all I got for today. I'll see you in the next video.